I was hammering the final pieces of my son's crib together when I heard my wife Jessica in the kitchen with her parents. "I don't love him. I never did. He's a paycheck with hands," she said coldly. Her mother nodded. "We'll get custody when he breaks." Then Logan, my teenage stepson, whispered. "Can I spit in his food?" I kept drilling. Never looked up. But I heard every word. This morning she and her mother showed up at my door, crying and begging for one last conversation. Before we continue, let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe and stick around to see what justice looks like. I never thought my life would turn into something straight out of a nightmare. My name is Amos, and at 36 years old I had everything I thought I wanted. I worked as a construction manager in Portland, Maine, earning decent money, and finally settling into what I believed was my forever family. 6 years ago I met Jessica at my college buddy's wedding. She was the maid of honor, a stunning woman, with auburn hair and a smile that lit up the room. We connected instantly over drinks at the reception. Her wit and charm captivated me, and by the end of the night, we exchanged numbers. She seemed perfect, the kind of woman I had always dreamed of finding. Our romance moved quickly. We texted constantly, spent every weekend together, and within 3 months I was head over heels in love. 8 months after we met, I proposed during a weekend trip to Cape Cod. She said yes immediately, tears streaming down her face. I thought they were tears of joy. Jessica came with a package deal, her 14-year-old son Logan from her previous marriage. At first, I tried everything to bond with him. I took him fishing, helped with homework, and even attended his soccer games when his own father consistently failed to show up. But Logan maintained a cold distance. He would respond with one-word answers and disappear to his room whenever I entered a space. "He just needs time," Jessica would say. His father really messed him up by leaving. I believed her and kept trying, but the resistance never faded. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing month. Jessica's parents, Walter and Diane Fisher, presented another challenge. They lived across town in a sprawling colonial home that practically screamed old money. From the moment I met them at our engagement dinner, I could tell they thought their daughter was slumming it with me. Walter, a retired banking executive, would constantly quiz me about my financial plans. "Construction is so volatile," he would say. "What's your backup if the economy tanks again?" Meanwhile, Diane would make passive-aggressive comments about Jessica's simpler life since meeting me. What bothered me most was how Jessica never defended me. When her father suggested I should aim higher than my management position, she nodded along. When her mother criticized our modest 3-bedroom home, Jessica apologized for it not being up to standards. Every family gathering became an exercise in biting my tongue and reminding myself it was only a few hours of discomfort. To prove myself worthy, I picked up extra shifts and weekend work. I paid off our mortgage faster than scheduled. I helped Jessica start her online boutique. I even paid for Logan's private school tuition when his father forgot his financial obligations. I was determined to show them all that I could provide, that I was worthy of being part of their family. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs during Jessica's pregnancy. She grew increasingly distant, complaining about every aspect of her changing body. While I marveled at ultrasound images and prepared for fatherhood by reading parenting books, she seemed annoyed by the very existence of our child. "Pregnancy is ruining my business," she would say, when morning sickness kept her from working. "Your son is already causing problems," became her common refrain. Still, I remained hopeful. I painted the nursery myself, soft blue with cloud details on the ceiling. I assembled furniture, stocked up on diapers, and even took parenting classes alone when Jessica refused to join. 2 weeks ago, our son Michael was born. Holding him for the first time was the single most powerful moment of my life. I cried openly as the nurse placed him in my arms, this tiny human with my eyes and Jessica's nose. But when it was Jessica's turn to hold him, her expression remained blank. She went through the motions, but the connection I expected to see was missing. "He looks just like my brother when he was a baby," she said flatly, before handing him back to the nurse. In the days that followed, Jessica barely interacted with Michael. She complained about breastfeeding, so we switched to formula. She groaned about diaper changes, so I handled most of them. When he cried at night, it was always me who got up to comfort him. Despite all this, I remained determined to be the best father possible. I decided to build Michael's crib myself, a sturdy oak piece that would eventually convert into a toddler bed. It was my way of creating something lasting for my son, a physical representation of my love for him. I had no idea that this labor of love would be the backdrop for discovering the painful truth about my marriage. It was a sunny Saturday morning when my world fell apart. Jessica's parents had arrived around 10 bearing expensive baby gifts and their usual condescending attitudes. I excused myself to the garage to work on finishing Michael's crib. The baby was sleeping soundly in his temporary bassinet, and I wanted to complete the project before he outgrew it. The garage window was cracked open for ventilation, giving me an unexpected audio channel to the kitchen where Jessica sat with her parents. At first, I heard only fragments of conversation, nothing that caught my attention as I focused on sanding the wood to baby-safe smoothness. "He has been up with Michael every night this week," Jessica said, her voice carrying clearly through the window. "Completely exhausted, but still going to work every day." For a brief moment, I thought she was speaking positively about me, perhaps finally acknowledging my efforts. That delusion shattered with her next words. "It is perfect, actually. The more tired he gets, the closer he gets to breaking down completely. Then we can move forward with the plan." I froze, sanding block hovering above the wood. My heart began to pound in my chest as I strained to hear more. "Darling, are you certain this is what you want?" her mother asked. "Divorce is messy, especially with a newborn involved." "Mom, I told you already. I do not love him. I never did. He is a paycheck with hands, nothing more." Her words hit me like physical blows. Each syllable felt like a nail being driven into my chest. 6 years together. A child. All of it meant nothing to her. "But the custody situation concerns me," Diane continued. "Courts tend to favor mothers, but they might grant him partial custody, given his stable job and involvement with the baby." "That is why we need to be strategic," Jessica replied. "We wait until he breaks down from stress and exhaustion. Document any mistakes. Maybe even provoke some arguments I can record. Then we file for full custody based on his instability." "Smart," her mother nodded. "We will get custody when he breaks. Your father and I have connections with Judge Patterson if needed." Their calculating tones made me sick to my stomach. These people, my family, were plotting against me as casually as discussing dinner plans. "What about the house?" Walter asked. "You said he paid it off already." "Yes," Jessica replied with a laugh that felt like acid in my ears. "He was so eager to prove himself to you both. Worked double shifts for 3 years to pay off a 30-year mortgage. The house is in both our names, but my lawyer says I can easily get it in the settlement, especially with a newborn." "And child support?" Diane asked. "Maximum amount possible," Jessica said confidently. "He makes good money, and with his construction background, the judge can impute even higher income based on potential overtime. I figure between the house support and alimony I will be set up nicely." I heard footsteps, then Logan's voice joined the conversation. "Is Amos still here?" "In the garage building that stupid crib," Jessica said dismissively. "So when are you guys doing this divorce thing?" he asked. "Soon, honey," Jessica replied. "We just need to be patient for a few more weeks." "Why, just wondering if I can start messing with him more," Logan said with a chuckle. "Can I spit in his food or something?" Instead of scolding him, they laughed. All 3 of them laughed at the idea of my stepson contaminating my meals, a boy I had tried so hard to connect with for years. "Just do not be obvious about it," Jessica advised. "We need him functional enough to keep working and bringing in money until everything is in place." "You always were strategic," Walter praised. "Just like me. Remember to start transferring small amounts to the account we set up. Nothing that would raise flags, but enough to give you a safety net he cannot touch." "Already doing it," Jessica confirmed. 500 here, 700 there. He never checks the accounts anyway. Too trusting." "And too stupid," Logan added, earning more laughter. My hand slipped, and the screwdriver I had picked up gashed across my palm. Blood welled up, but I barely felt the pain. It paled in comparison to what was happening to my heart, my future, my entire reality. I tasted bile in my throat but swallowed it down. A strange calm descended over me as I wrapped a shop rag around my bleeding hand. I picked up the drill again and continued working on the crib. They had revealed their true selves, their true intentions. The family I thought I had was an illusion. The woman I loved had been playing me from the start. The home I built was just another asset to be stripped from me. But they had made one critical mistake. They had shown their hand too early. My son was only 2 weeks old, and already they were planning to use him as a pawn in their scheme. Michael deserved better. I deserved better. I kept drilling, never looked up. But my mind was already formulating a plan of my own. The week that followed was the hardest performance of my life. I maintained a perfect facade of normalcy, while strategically dismantling the trap they had set for me. Each morning I kissed Jessica goodbye, as if I had not heard her declare her loveless intentions. Each evening I cared for our son with the genuine love I felt for him, all while pretending not to notice Jessica's impatient sighs and disinterest. I even managed pleasant conversation with her parents when they visited daily, supposedly to help with the baby, but clearly to monitor my mental state. The day after overhearing their plan, I went to an electronics store during my lunch break and purchased small recording devices. That night, while Jessica slept, I installed them in common areas of our home. Maine is a one-party consent state for recordings, something I confirmed with a quick online search. I needed evidence beyond what I had overheard. 3 days after my discovery, I met with attorney Frank Townsend during another lunch break. Frank was recommended by my foreman as the kind of lawyer who fights dirty when the other side plays dirty first. In his wood-paneled office, I laid out everything I had heard and my suspicions. Classic ambush divorce, Frank nodded grimly. Unfortunately, I see this more often than you would think. The good news is they have not filed yet, which gives us the advantage of preparation. On Frank's advice, I began securing my financial assets. I opened a new account at a different bank and redirected my next paycheck there. I documented every expense related to Michael and took photographs of all valuable items in our home. I made copies of important documents and stored them in a safety deposit box Frank helped me acquire. I researched custody laws in Maine extensively during night feedings while Jessica slept. The state prioritizes the best interests of the child with factors including the age of the child, each parent's relationship with the child, stability of each parent's home, and willingness to foster a relationship with the other parent. I began keeping a detailed journal of all care I provided for Michael versus Jessica's minimal involvement. There was a close call on day 5 when Jessica nearly caught me transferring digital copies of our financial records to a secure cloud account. I quickly switched screens to a sports website and commented on a recent game. She seemed suspicious but said nothing. The hardest part was continuing interactions with Jessica's family. Her parents invited us for dinner that week, and I sat through 3 hours of their thinly veiled contempt. Walter made pointed comments about men who crack under pressure, while Diane questioned whether I was looking tired lately. Logan watched me with barely contained amusement, and I wondered if he had actually been spitting in my food all along. My recording devices proved effective, capturing multiple conversations that corroborated what I had initially overheard. Jessica discussing divorce strategies with her mother on the phone. Logan asking when the plan would happen. Jessica complaining to a friend that she was stuck with the boring provider type but would soon be free with his money. With Frank's help, I hired a private investigator who discovered Jessica's hidden account with nearly $15,000 transferred from our joint account over the past 3 months. The investigator also uncovered interesting information about the family's history. Apparently, Jessica had done something similar with Logan's father, though on a smaller scale, as he had less money and assets. Throughout this ordeal, my relationship with Michael deepened. During late-night feedings, I would hold him close and promise that I would protect him. Those quiet moments, his tiny hand wrapped around my finger, gave me the strength to continue the charade during daylight hours. I finished Michael's crib and set it up in the nursery 7 days after my discovery. Jessica came to inspect it, running her hand along the polished oak rail. "It is beautiful," she said with a smile that never reached her eyes. "You are so handy. Michael is lucky to have such a talented father." Her words, once so precious to me, now rang hollow. I thanked her and suggested we move Michael from his bassinet that night. She agreed absently, already scrolling through her phone. That night, after placing Michael in his new crib for the first time, I sat in the rocking chair beside it and wrote him a letter for the future. I explained how much I loved him, how I would always fight for him, and how sometimes the hardest decisions are made out of the deepest love. I sealed it in an envelope and tucked it into my secure box of documents. By the end of the week, everything was in place. Frank had prepared emergency custody paperwork based on the evidence we had gathered. My finances were secured as much as possible. The final piece was preparing myself emotionally for what would come next. I lay awake that night, Jessica sleeping soundly beside me, completely unaware that her carefully constructed house of cards was about to collapse. For the first time since hearing those devastating words in the garage, I felt something beyond pain and betrayal. I felt ready. The morning of the confrontation, I went through my usual routine. I showered, dressed for work, kissed Michael goodbye, and told Jessica I would be home by 6. Instead of going to work, I met Frank at the courthouse, where we filed for emergency temporary custody of Michael based on the evidence we had gathered of parental alienation planning and Jessica's demonstrated lack of interest in his care. The judge, a stern woman with 30 years of family court experience, reviewed our evidence carefully. The recordings were particularly damning, especially the parts where Jessica and her parents discussed using Michael as leverage. When the judge heard Logan asking if he could spit in my food, and Jessica's encouraging response, her expression hardened visibly. "This is exactly the kind of toxic environment no child should be raised in," she stated, signing the temporary order. "Mr. Kelly is granted temporary full physical custody pending a full hearing. Mrs. Kelly may have supervised visitation to be arranged through the court." With the court order in hand, I returned home expecting to confront Jessica. Instead, I found the house empty and a note on the kitchen counter. "Took Michael to my parents for a family weekend. Back Sunday. Do not call unless emergency." My heart raced with panic until I called Frank, who assured me that leaving with Michael after the court order was filed, but before Jessica was served, constituted parental interference, which would only strengthen our case. "The sheriff is on his way to your in-laws' house now, with the order," Frank explained. "Stay put and let the system work." An hour later, my phone exploded, with calls from Jessica, her parents, and even Logan. I let them go to voicemail, listening to Jessica's progression from confusion to rage to panic as she realized what had happened. "What the hell did you do?" her first message demanded. "You cannot take my son from me like this," the second one threatened. By the fifth message, her tone had changed completely. "Amos, please. There must be some misunderstanding. Let us talk about this. I am sure we can work things out." I texted her a single response. "I heard everything in the garage last Saturday. Every word. Come to the house if you want to talk." 30 minutes later, Jessica's car screeched into the driveway, followed by her parents' luxury SUV. I watched through the window as the three of them rushed toward the house, Jessica clutching Michael's baby carrier. Her face was streaked with mascara, her carefully maintained appearance finally cracking. I opened the door before they could knock. "The court order says, Michael stays with me," I stated calmly. "This is ridiculous," Walter blustered, attempting to push past me. "What kind of man takes a baby from his mother? The kind who discovers his wife and in-laws plotting to use that baby as a pawn, in a custody battle," I replied, standing firm in the doorway. "I heard everything last Saturday while building Michael's crib. Every word about how Jessica never loved me, how I am just a paycheck with hands, how you were all waiting for me to break down so you could take my son." Jessica's face went pale. You were spying on us." "No, Jessica. I was building our son's crib with the garage window open. You were the ones plotting to destroy my life, without bothering to check if I could hear you." "Whatever you think you heard was taken out of context," Diane interjected smoothly. "Family conversations can sound strange to outsiders. Is that so? I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Should I play back the recordings of the conversations that followed? The ones where you discussed hiding assets, or perhaps the one where Jessica tells her friend how she married me for financial stability while planning to eventually trade. Up, Jessica's expression shifted from shock to calculation. Amos, honey, we were just talking. You know how my parents worry about financial security. I was just reassuring them. By saying you never loved me, by planning how to get maximum child support, by letting Logan talk about spitting in my food. At the mention of that detail, Jessica flinched. It was clearly one of the most difficult things to explain away. Logan was just joking, she attempted. You know teenagers say crazy things. I looked at my stepson, who stood behind his grandparents with a scowl. Was it a joke, Logan? Because you looked pretty serious when you asked it and none of the adults corrected you. He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Hand over Michael, I said firmly to Jessica. The court order is clear. He stays with me. You cannot do this, she cried, clutching the carrier tighter. I am his mother. A mother who has changed exactly 3 diapers since he was born, I countered. A mother who complained about every feeding, who has never gotten up for a night crying session, who refers to him as your son when talking to me. Walter stepped forward, lowering his voice. Let us be reasonable here, Amos. What would it take to make this go away? Name your price. The fact that he thought I could be bought off disgusted me. There is no price for my son's well-being, I replied coldly. And attempting to bribe me just gives me more to tell the judge. Jessica suddenly changed tactics, tears flowing freely now. I am sorry, Amos. I was stressed from the pregnancy, not thinking clearly. We can fix this. I love you. I have always loved you. Please do not break up our family. Her performance might have moved me once, but now I saw through it completely. You never loved me, I said quietly. But I will always love our son, which is why I am fighting for him. We have connections. Diane threatened her pleasant facade, finally dropping entirely. Walter golfed with Judge Patterson just last weekend. One call from him, and your temporary order will be thrown out. Attempting to improperly influence a judge, I nodded. Another excellent addition to our court records. Keep talking, Diane. My attorney will be thrilled. As if on cue, a police cruiser pulled up behind their vehicles. An officer approached with papers in hand. Mrs. Kelly, he called. I have a court order to serve. Jessica looked frantically between me and the approaching officer, then thrust Michael's carrier toward me. This is not over, she hissed. Not by a long shot. For once we agree on something, I replied, taking my son from her. But unlike you, I am not playing games with his future. The officer served Jessica with the papers explaining the terms of the temporary custody arrangement and the date for the full hearing. Walter immediately pulled out his phone and walked away, presumably to call his connections. Diane put her arm around Jessica, glaring at me with undisguised hatred. You will regret this, Jessica said, her voice breaking between anger and pleading. Please, just one more chance. We can talk about this. We are past talking, I replied. The court will decide what happens next. As they reluctantly retreated to their cars, I stood in the doorway holding Michael, who had somehow slept through the entire confrontation. The weight of him in my arms reminded me why this painful stand was necessary. I love you, buddy, I whispered as I closed and locked the door behind us. And that is never going to change. 6 months have passed since that confrontation on my doorstep. Michael and I now live in a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment across town, close to my work and a nice park where we spend weekend mornings. The custody battle was brutal but decisive. Jessica's parents threw expensive lawyers and their social connections at the case, but the evidence was simply too damning. The recordings, Jessica's documented lack of involvement in Michael's care, and the testimony of our pediatrician about who brought Michael to appointments, all painted a clear picture for the court. In the end, I was awarded primary physical custody, with Jessica granted supervised visitation twice weekly. She fought the supervision requirement bitterly, but her demonstrated willingness to use Michael as a pawn worked against her. Building a support network as a single father has been both challenging and rewarding. My coworkers have been unexpectedly supportive, organizing meal trains during the first difficult weeks and adjusting project schedules to accommodate my new reality. I joined a single-parent support group where I found understanding from others walking similar paths. My sister moved from Boston to Portland to be closer to us, providing both practical help and the family connection I desperately needed. Adjusting to single fatherhood has been a steep learning curve. There have been sleepless nights, childcare emergencies, and moments of overwhelming doubt, but there have also been indescribable joys. Michael's first real smile at 2 months old directed squarely at me. His first attempts at rolling over. The way he studies my face when I feed him, as if memorizing every feature. These moments sustain me through the harder times. One of the most unexpected developments came 3 months ago when Logan reached out to me. After the initial custody arrangement, he had moved in with his biological father, who apparently had been fighting Jessica for more involvement for years. Away from his mother's influence, Logan sent me a lengthy email apologizing for his behavior and asking questions about Michael. We met for lunch, a tense but ultimately healing encounter, where he admitted that Jessica had always spoken negatively about both me and his father, positioning herself as the victim of inadequate men. "She told me you were trying to replace my dad," he explained, "and that I needed to help protect her from you taking over. I realize now how messed up that was. Our relationship is slowly mending." He visits occasionally to see Michael, showing the kind of brotherly interest I always hoped he would develop. It is a small miracle amid the wreckage of what I thought was my family. Jessica continues attempting to reinsert herself into our lives beyond the court-mandated visitation. She has cycled through strategies from tearful apologies to legal threats to sudden professions of undying love. Recently, she has begun bringing expensive gifts for Michael and speaking of our future together, as if the divorce proceedings are not actively underway. Frank assures me this is common behavior from someone who views relationships as transactions and cannot accept losing control. The divorce will be finalized next month, with the custody arrangement remaining as it is now, unless significant changes warrant revisiting it. The house we shared was sold with the proceeds split, according to the court's determination of equitable distribution. Jessica fought for more, of course, but the evidence of her plans to manipulate the system worked against her claims. My career has taken an unexpected turn for the better. My company offered me a project management position that requires less field time and provides more flexibility for parenting. The owner, a grandfather of 5, told me frankly, "We need more dedicated fathers in management. The skills translate better than you might think." Tonight, as I sit in the rocking chair next to the crib I built, watching Michael sleep peacefully, I reflect on the painful journey that brought us here. The betrayal still stings when I allow myself to dwell on it. There are moments when I question how I could have been so blind to Jessica's true nature for so many years. But those questions lead nowhere productive. Instead, I focus on the unexpected lessons from this ordeal. I learned that strength does not always look like what we expect. Sometimes it is quiet, like continuing to drill while your world collapses around you. Sometimes it is strategic, like gathering evidence while maintaining a facade. And sometimes it is vulnerable, like admitting to a support group that you are terrified of failing your child. I also learned that love and manipulation can wear similar masks, but time reveals their true nature. Real love seeks the best for others, even at personal cost. Manipulation seeks control and personal gain. I hope to teach Michael this difference as he grows, so he might recognize authentic connection when he finds it. Most importantly, I discovered reserves of resilience I never knew I possessed. The man Jessica and her family thought would break under pressure instead found clarity and purpose. The pain they inflicted became the catalyst for building a healthier life for myself and my son. As I gently stroke Michael's cheek, his tiny hand reflexively grasping my finger even in sleep, I feel profound gratitude amid the lingering hurt. This was not the family story I envisioned, but it is ours. And unlike the false narrative I lived in before, this one is built on truth, resilience, and authentic love. Have you ever discovered a painful truth that ultimately set you free? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more real-life stories of overcoming betrayal and finding strength in unexpected places. Like this video if you believe in standing up for what is right even when it is difficult. And share with someone who might need to hear that surviving betrayal is possible. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes, what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something far better than you imagine.